Hello, you beautiful listeners. In this episode, we bring you part one of our conversation with the Queen, Karen Thomas, co-owner of Pineapple Eddie Southern Bistro, winner of Erie Reader's Best of Erie Award for the past 5 years. But before we get to that, we wanted to let you know about a book we're reading called Black Indians by William Loren Katz. Black Indians is about the first Native and African Americans that were on this land and the relationship between them that has not been documented. William Loren Katz gives us an inside look into the colonization of these two groups by white settlers. If you're interested in reading with us this month, drop us a message on our Facebook or Instagram pages, or you can email us at ourerie@gmail.com. And then in January, we'll send you a private invite to discuss the book as part of our show. Peace. You're listening to the Our Erie podcast with Davona,
Marty, Nwachukwu,
and Lydia, Laythe.
This series will bring citizens, entrepreneurs, activists, politicians, artists, and thought leaders to the table for a frank discussion around societal issues facing our post-industrial city and the United States at large. Take a seat. Ms. Karen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Start off with that.
Sure. So I will say that first, I am a native New Yorker. I'm originally from New York City. I find myself in Erie because of my husband's work. We actually met undergrad in Rhode Island years ago. I am one of two. I have a sister who is a year younger than me. I find myself in Erie because, like I said, because of my husband's work. I have 3 children that I pretty much raised here. My youngest one was about 2 years old when we moved here. The oldest one was about 4. The middle one, who was the youngest one, but is now the middle one, was 2. And then I have a younger one that was actually born here. I've been here probably for about 20 plus years now. Yes, I kind of like it. Yes. I think it's awesome. It's one of my pet peeves has always been traffic and the time that I spent commuting when I used to live in New York City. So here is like a breeze. It's a piece of cake. It's very refreshing. Mm. Yes, you can find time in the day to do things where in, bigger cities, you might not have that luxury.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things that I noticed that, or at least it's always a telltale sign when I talk to people that are originally from here, and they have never lived anywhere else, especially in a bigger city. And, I hear all the things from everything from dreary Erie to, it's boring around here, a multitude of things. But, I always go back to the fact that, there is a lot to do here. You just have to decide that you want to participate. We've got a nice state park. We've got 2 theaters. Well, actually, we've got more than that, but 2 big ones. We've got a Philharmonic, which, everybody might not be into that music, but when that culture exists in a city, that's really a big deal.
Yes.
We've got some universities around town here. So, it lends itself to interesting dynamic for a small city. Mm-hmm. I am getting back to a little bit more about me. I am a graduate of Johnson & Wales University. I majored in hospitality management, minored in culinary arts. I was an exchange student in Europe during that time. I worked for probably about 10 or 15 years in the field. I started in the Waldorf Astoria in New York City before that hotel eventually changed over to something else. I also worked my dad had his own catering company. I worked with him for a little while in Brooklyn before I finally moved out of New York and into Pittsburgh for a short period of time. So I've been in a few places and enough to understand and appreciate, the how do you say, quality of life aspect of things, you know, the ability to slow down and sort of take things in as you're, you know, going through your everyday life. So yeah.
Wow.
How long did you spend in Europe and where were you in Europe?
So I was an exchange student at Strasbourg International University. They had a partnership with Johnson and Wales. That was in Strasbourg, France. It was right on the French-German border. So I had a Euro pass when I went over there. So as soon as I got there, we had only like a 4-day school schedule. So that enabled us to have the ability to be able to travel for long weekends. So I pretty much worked that pass out. I went as far south as Greece, as far north as, well, let's see. Some of us split up during one weekend. So they went to Copenhagen. I didn't want to go to Copenhagen. I think I went to, I was in Germany, different parts of Germany. I was in Austria. What else? And I went to several different places, several different regions in France. The French Riviera, to Paris, to the northern parts of France, just to get a sense. It's kind of interesting because just like we have different dynamics in our country, on our continent, they're not as well. Those countries are part of a continent, but that it's amazing how different each area is the further south or north or east or west that you go, even in Italy. So it was a good time. And if you know, if anyone was, you know, I would say to anyone that is in school now in Europe, and of course it's a lot different time now, there's so many other things we have to be concerned about. But I would always encourage people, if they have the opportunity to travel while they're a student, that it's a good thing to do. It can certainly broaden your perspective on a lot of things. And of course, when you travel like a student, it's totally different than when you travel and you actually have money. Yes, I remember my backpack. My backpack was the source of a lot of stuff. It was good. Now I can't even imagine traveling with a backpack. I at least need like 2 bags, you know, so it's crazy. But it was a good time because you weren't worried about all the superficial things you worry about now. You know, you want to make sure you have a toothbrush, a couple of changes of underwear, and you know, if you're not sweating or anything, you could probably wear a couple of things like, you know, a few times before it becomes an issue, you know. So by that time you're back at your dorm room. So yeah, so it was good.
So I guess I always like to ask or to think about like how you see yourself fitting into like the city of Erie, especially because we've talked about too the idea of people that grew up here versus coming here. And even like, I know for myself, like I've been part of this area for so long, almost my entire life, but there's still kind of this sense, like if you weren't born here, you're not from here. And there's like this disconnect. I guess, where do you see yourself? And especially with such an like, when you talk about hospitality or a restaurant, right, like that is just a space of gathering and community. And so you really do embed yourself in the community when you own a business like that. So where do you see yourself fitting into the Erie community?
I think that I would say that, you know, it's kind of just like what you said. When we first moved here, obviously I was not out in the workforce. I was still raising my children. So it afforded me the opportunity, and because the community is the size that it is, it afforded me the opportunity to be able to be a participant. I did some things on boards at my children's school. I got involved with organizations that were affiliated with my husband's work because he's in medicine. And it was probably the best thing I could have ever done, because it really put me on a short track to knowing a lot of people in a relatively short period of time. The beauty of this community is if you do things or you're part of anything in this community, people definitely do become aware of who you are, and especially if you're doing good things, you know. So I think I would say that I see myself as, and now that we have a business that, of course, is sort of like a gathering place, I have sort of begun to see that come to fruition. There can be, before this whole pandemic started, there could be any particular night that we could have, you know, a full house. And as people walked through the building to be seated at their tables, would pass by at least 3 or 4 tables where they knew other people. I mean, that's a really incredible thing, I think, you know. Of course, living in New York, the ability to see somebody that you know is almost slim to none, because there's just so many people everywhere, like all the time. Even in the neighborhood that I lived in, I could go up to the main street that sort of bordered the neighborhood, where most of the time commuters would show up to get on buses or trains before they went to work, and not always necessarily see people that I knew. So here, for me, that was part of the charm of being in Erie. So I would have to say that I see myself as somebody who sort of facilitates the ability for people to connect with one another, which is a good thing, you know. And when I say connect, I mean all different kinds of people, because I mean, it really is, we really have had, you know, the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting a lot of different people from all different walks of life, economic, socioeconomic, you know, race, religion, all kinds of people coming into this restaurant. And so for us, that has been an incredibly satisfying thing, because we've been told that that doesn't happen in too many other places, which I was kind of surprised by, because everybody has to eat, you know. But we seem to have wound up to be a kind of like this gathering place that a lot of different types of people feel really comfortable being, you know. And so
Yes, and honestly, I'm just sitting here listening to you. I'm honored because we go back, you know, a couple years, just my wife and I living close
yes.
to y'all, and really just coming to honestly become getting acquainted and being patrons.
Mhm.
The vibe has always been what has kept us. The vibe, the way that you guys just like fill us with love when we come. We honestly, I'm just sitting here and I feel very honored to be in your space, because you've always treated us with respect. And you've always, honestly, just every time we see you, it's just like a light. So I'm really, really honored to be here with you
Thank you
today.
for that. Thank you.
Yes. And honestly, because I mean, and when you talk about community, I appreciate you again, because with Erie Black Wall Street, we've even collaborated with having our sip and mingle with you guys. And so I'm appreciative of y'all, because when you talk about community, even with us, you've really been like, okay, well, yes, y'all were like, would you want to have a sip and mingle at our place? Network, talk, have conversation, food, and chill. So really, honestly, what you're talking about, y'all, the business and you and Miss Adrian really embody that, and the whole business as a whole. So I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited to sit here and talk with you today.
That's great. It's always good to hear that's what's happening. And we're certainly not, it's not, this is not a manufactured thing. This is just kind of like who we are.
Yes.
And I think that has a lot to do with how we were raised. Again, my dad had his own catering business, and my mom, even though she was a school teacher by profession, in her free time, you know, certainly encouraged and nurtured the same vibration. So, you know, for us, hospitality and food has always been a source of comfort for people, a celebration, just a very communal time for people. And so it would seem that it would make logical sense that you would, when you went out to dinner, that you would be in a space that you felt comfortable in gathering, and it feels warm and inviting to be there, and people are not as inhibited or as reluctant to just be with one another, you know.
That is
So
true.
yeah.
True. And I of the place, I really love the diversity of the place, because y'all bring in all different type of people. And I think diversity is super important when you've created and cultivated a space for everybody to be able to eat and just vibe there. And it's just beautiful. I'm excited. So if anybody has never been to Pineapple Eddie's, y'all need to go for real.
Well, with that said,
Go ahead.
for those who may have not in the Erie made it over to Pineapple Eddie's, or you're listening from another place, Miss Karen, can you describe like your cuisine and what
Yes.
inspired you to open
So
Pineapple Eddie's?
we are a Southern regional and Caribbean fusion cuisine, mainly because, well, that's who we are. My parents were originally from the South. My dad was from Eustis, Florida. My mom was from Birmingham, Alabama. I still have a grandmother still living. She's 100. Yes, she's 100. But things that I learned from her while I was a kid growing up, they encouraged, I had an interest to be in the kitchen. And so that was encouraged by a little footstool or a step stool that they would push up to the counter when I was too small to stand there at their height so that I could help them. But we chose that cuisine, again, because that is part of who we are. And also the Caribbean influence comes from my brother-in-law, who is the chef. He's originally from Haiti. And he too remembers his mother's cooking and some of the things that, resonated culturally for him, cuisine-wise. And so we have sort of figured out how to lace those two things together. I wouldn't say that it would be a strange or unusual thing to find those two things together. When we first were brought here, as a people in bondage, those influences came with us. So that they do appear together in a lot of other places as well. But yeah, that's how we come to be. That's how we arrive at that cuisine.
What dishes made you like reflect on and say like this is more heavily inspired by Caribbean heritage and this is more?
Sure. So we have an item on the menu called griot, which is a cubed pork that's flash fried. That is a traditional Haitian dish. We do have curries. They don't often live on the menu. We sort of have a side menu or a second menu, as you will, that changes all the time. I think one of the things that became clear to me when I first moved here, and I was here probably for about I was here for maybe about 10 years before my sister moved here. And so the one thing that I noticed that was, quite obvious in this community is that people like comfort food, and they like things that they are familiar with.
Yes.
And so that being said, there's a lot of times people try to reinvent the wheel when they do things. And simplicity is probably one of the most sophisticated things that you will ever encounter. It's just a matter of how you deliver it. So, we sort of kept the menu not simple, but pretty straightforward. So not too complicated and too far off the map. So, the idea is that people should think of us as some place where they can come to and always find something on the menu that they are familiar with or they know that they will like. And then our specials menu is the menu where we really get to experiment. And so we find that a lot of people like to know when they come in here, what's on the specials? Yeah, I see the menu, but what's on the specials menu? It's almost like telling a story. They want to hear like, what are the things that you have on there? What did you do different like this week? And it seems to be working for us. So that's how we figured that we would sort of keep the things that are sort of American, traditional, Southern on the menu. Some sort of continental cuisine, things that they recognize, of course, like steaks and burgers and salads, a little bit of pasta because Erie loves their pasta.
Carbs.
Put our little spin on it. And then, really experiment and go off the map on the specials menu.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're eating. We're currently enjoying some of the cuisine from Pineapple Eddie's.
Yes.
Davona, what did you get?
Oh, I got the jerk chicken today.
She was sweating earlier.
It is spicy and I love it. Like, I love the spice. Like, yes, let me open up my window because I need to release all the negative toxins that are in the body. So no, really, it's really good. One of my favorite main things on the menu though, that we really like to eat is the oxtails. But I was like, you know what? I'll get the jerk chicken today. Oh, and the waffle and raw waffles and chicken and waffles. But yes, today I got jerk chicken. I wanted something different. What'd you get, Marty?
I got the half roasted or the roasted chicken, but it's like a half a chicken, as well as the catfish bites, and it is delicious.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I've eaten at Pineapple Eddie's on like special occasions, but I'm not like a regular, so I'm not really familiar with the menu. So when I saw plantains as a side, I lost my mind.
Awesome.
It reminds me of home. My mom always makes them. It's big in African and South American cultures and Caribbean cultures.
Yes.
And unless you go to like a restaurant that's like aware of that,
right,
you don't often see plantains on a menu. So
right.
Love
That's
it.
awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, and I got the butternut squash ravioli, which is like, again, I'm like pasta city, so I saw pasta and I saw like the ravioli, and I was like, yeah.
But it's different. You got that butternut squash though. I've never even had that.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. You have to get it. Anyway, but I think that's so cool. Like in our 3 orders too, like how we kind of exemplified exactly what Karen you were just talking about, as far as like seeing a part of ourselves or a part of our comfort zone, a part of our home in the food. Right? So like Marty saw plantains and she was like, oh my gosh, like gravitated towards it. I saw raviolis and I'm like gravitated towards it. Davona, who is like there all the time, sees all the things that she loves, but like has now found she's already felt comfortable in that space, in that, in the menu. So now she's venturing out and trying. I just think
that's cool. That's a really good perspective. I love that.
It is. That's great. That means that it worked.
You've been listening to the Our Erie podcast, the voice of reason in the fog of post-industrial America. Next week, our guest is Mabel Howard of Cafe 710. If you would like to continue the conversation, visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/Our Erie series. This podcast is produced by John C. Lyons, Marty Nwachukwu, Davona Pacley, and Lydia Laythe. Music by Corey Cook. Funding provided by Erie Arts and Culture. And we appreciate you all for listening to Our Erie podcast. Peace.